This was probably one of the craziest and most entertaining debates in history, as shots were fired, moderators were ignored, ground was won and lost, and this audience member kept seeing herself in the program monitor. The second Republican debate has one less debater than the first, and those remaining easily filled the time. So what exactly happened, and what do you need to know about everyone running for president? This is the Political Stalker. Let's get started. September 27, 2023. The debate featured Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, former South Carolina and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, former Vice President Mike Pence, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Not participating is former President Donald Trump, who declined to appear, and Asa Hutchinson, who was not invited to this debate but remains in the race. At the time of this debate, Trump has a massive lead in the polls at 54%, followed by DeSantis at 13.8%, Ramaswamy and Haley are tied at 6.3%, Pence is in 5th place at 4.6%, Christie and Scott sit at 2.9% and 2.7%, with Burgum at 0.9%. This debate struggled to stay on topic, but we will do our best to share what everyone said, one topic at a time. The first topic in question was on the unions. Both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are meeting with workers in Michigan amongst an auto workers strike at the same time as the debate. And Tim Scott started by saying that Biden and the US have overpromised and underdelivered when it comes to helping unions. And because of the unions' reliance on government help, members of those unions are suffering.
We must make sure that we honor the commitments that we make. And one of the ways that we do that, do not overpromise and then underdeliver and leave the taxpayers on the hook.
Vivek Ramaswamy shared that he sympathizes with the union workers, but sees unions as giving them a sense of victimization.
I understand that hardship is not a choice, but victimhood is a choice.
Pence stated that the reason so many are suffering financially right now is because of Bidenomics, or specifically the inflation that Bidenomics is causing, that this suffering is not because of a wage gap or the 1%. He also added that he supports the right to work, meaning that workers have the option to join a union or not and still have the opportunities in the industry.
I'll be standing for the right to work of every American to join a union or not join a union as they decide.
Nikki Haley added that the reason inflation is so bad is because of the excessive spending, and Doug Burgum specifically called to the auto workers union, saying that the industry is suffering as much as it is because Biden has been subsidizing electric vehicles that are not made in the US, but made in China.
We're subsidizing electric vehicles, and the batteries come from China. That's why they're striking, because they need 2/3 less workers to build an electric car.
Chris Christie started his night by calling out all of DC for failing the economy and the increasing debt under the last two presidents. He used one of Trump's favorite lines about Biden hiding in his basement, but then turned it back on Trump, saying that he should be here tonight.
Joe Biden hides in his basement, and Donald Trump hides behind the walls of his golf clubs and won't show up here to answer questions like all the rest of us are up here to answer. And if the government closes, it's the blame. It is to the blame of everyone in Washington, D.C.
Everyone wanted to respond to that, but DeSantis' voice won out as he agreed that everyone in D.C. is to blame for the economy and that Trump should have been present tonight in order to answer for the debt that he is responsible for.
He should be on this stage tonight. He owes it to you to defend his record, where they added $7.8 trillion to the debt.
The subject temporarily shifted to childcare, which Tim Scott responded to by saying that parents need greater tax cuts and should be able to spend more of their own money.
More parents had more resources to make the decisions how to take care of their family. The one thing we should do is let the American people keep their money.
But before Burgum could share any of his thoughts on childcare,
there's a lot of time
about childcare. Nobody answered the question.
The subject changed again, this time to the southern border. Christie was asked why he once advocated for a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants, but no longer does.
The problem is that since no one has done anything since we first had this discussion 13 years ago, we're not in a position to be able to do any of that anymore.
He does affirm that he wants people to immigrate to the US, but that they should do it legally. Haley wants to defund sanctuary cities and increase funding to Border Patrol.
Defund sanctuary cities. You see what's happening in Philadelphia right now. It's gotta stop.
While Ramaswamy would militarize the southern border and end birthright laws, which allows the children of illegal immigrants citizenship. He and Scott point to the 14th Amendment, where it states the conditions of citizenship and specify that they were intended for former slaves, not for the children of illegal immigrants.
I've actually read the 14th Amendment. What it says is that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the laws and jurisdiction thereof are citizens.
So the challenge that we face is in fact one that has to do with whether or not the people that come here are under the jurisdiction of our laws. And frankly, if you come here illegally, you are not.
Chaos erupted after Scott accused Ramaswamy of doing business in communist China and even being tied to Hunter Biden.
You were just in business with the Chinese Communist Party and the same people that funded Hunter Biden millions of dollars was a partner of yours as well. So the bottom line is when you say you can't be on both sides.
Gentlemen, you'll have your turn.
Ramaswamy managed to respond by saying that he did do business in China, but eventually did move out.
When every other CEO expanded into the Chinese market, you know what I did with my first company? We opened a subsidiary in China. But you know what I did that was different than every other company? We got the hell out of there.
Though he clearly didn't say everything he wanted to.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
We need to declare independence from China.
Pence continued the sentiment with a quick jab at Ramaswamy.
I'm glad Vivek pulled out of his business deal in 2018 in China. That must have been about the time you decided to start voting in presidential elections.
Followed by sharing his experience of securing the border as VP. The moderators pivoted to the topic of crime, where Christie committed to bringing in effective district attorneys who will go after all crimes, including the ones levied against Donald Trump. He then looked into the camera to speak directly to Donald Trump.
And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
All right. I want to ask Governor DeSantis.
DeSantis said that we fight crime by backing the blue, and Nikki Haley summarized most of their sentiments by saying,
We have to start taking care of law enforcement who also follow through on what they do.
Burgum stated that we should not be removing guns as the left would like, but that we should be focusing on the behavioral health of people. Ramaswamy agreed, saying that many fentanyl deaths come from teenagers who are mentally unwell, and by focusing on that, we can treat the problem at its core. And on the topic of mass shootings, Pence said that he would pass an expedited death penalty to anyone behind a mass shooting.
And we're going to pass a federal expedited death penalty for anyone involved in a mass shooting.
Before sharing that, though, Pence had been asked about Obamacare and if he would agree to repeal it.
Or is Obamacare here to stay?
Well, first, let me speak to the mass shootings issue.
After sharing his thoughts on mass shootings, Pence simply stated that he would remove the nationwide Obamacare to allow states to pass their own healthcare options. DeSantis blames the healthcare crisis on big pharma and big insurance companies, saying that the government needs to go after them. Nikki Haley called for full transparency with patients in healthcare.
Why is it that when we got the bill, the insurance company and the hospital negotiated the bill for her without her having anything to do with it? Second thing is you've got to deal with tort law. The doctors don't give you the 10 tests because they want to. It's because of the 90% chance they'll get sued.
And Burgum pointed to the government subsidization of specific tech and programs in healthcare as the reason the industry is doing so poorly.
The only industry in the world that's ever absorbed $1 trillion of IT and became less productive, they saw less patients per day, is U.S. healthcare because they were subsidizing a certain kind of technology.
Haley, Christie, and DeSantis said that parents should have multiple options for educating their children. Haley emphasized the importance of reading and vocational classes, also saying that the federal government should get out of education and leave it at a state level, something that Burgum also agreed with. Christie pointed at the teachers union as a source of issues in education.
This public school system is no longer run by the public. It is run by the teachers unions in this country.
Even calling out First Lady Jill Biden as being a member of the union.
And when you have the President of the United States sleeping with a member of the teachers union, there is no chance that you could take the stranglehold away from the teachers union every day.
Pence later made it a point that he too was sleeping with a teacher.
By way of full disclosure, Chris, you mentioned the president's situation. My wife isn't a member of the teachers union, but I got to admit I've been sleeping with a teacher for 38 years. And so full disclosure.
And DeSantis proudly stated the lack of race theory and other progressive curriculums in Florida schools, and that parents have a right to know what is being taught in schools. A lot was said on the topic of various minority groups, starting with Tim Scott proclaiming that nothing good has come from slavery or black discrimination, but that blacks survived this and have grown past it.
Black families survived slavery. We survived poll taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination. What was hard to survive was Johnson's Great Society, where they decided to take the black father out of the household to get a check in the mail. If you want to restore hope, you've got to restore the family.
He then called out Lyndon B. Johnson's policies towards the black communities of the country, saying that they have awarded fatherlessness and incentivized it. But he was sure to close by saying that the United States is not a racist country. Ramaswamy shared his opinion that transgenderism is a mental health disorder.
Transgenderism, especially in kids, is a mental health disorder. We have to acknowledge the truth of that for what it is.
And he and Pence said that anyone under 18 years old should not be allowed to receive gender-altering procedures.
And we're going to pass a federal ban on transgender chemical or surgical surgery anywhere in the country. We've got to protect our kids.
He also linked suicide rates amongst the LGBTQ community to the lack of parent involvement.
The very people who say that this increases the risk of suicide are also the ones saying that parents don't have the right to know.
Now, if you are still here, congratulations, you made it to the fun part of the debate. But before we get into that, go ahead and click on that subscribe button to be sure you stay up to date with all things politics. We try our best to summarize everything in a simple and unbiased way, allowing you to learn everything you need to know without feeling overwhelmed by the stress that all too often accompanies this subject. So thank you for subscribing. Let's get into it. DeSantis was asked about companies like Apple and Google, which he called monopolies, but that we need to be careful to not rely on Chinese companies and services, emphasizing TikTok. And for a little bit of background, there is one person on this stage who has an active TikTok account, and that is Vivek Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy said that he would go after TikTok as president, but in the meantime is using it to reach a younger audience, something he said that no one else in the Republican Party was doing successfully. He also shared his opinion that people under the age of 16 really should not be on these addictive sites that are social media.
Kids under the age of 16 should not be using addictive social media.
Nikki Haley responded to this like so.
Honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say, because I can't believe they hear you've got a TikTok situation.
And she called TikTok dangerous as it links directly to Chinese intelligence and jabbed at Ramaswamy for having done business in China and therefore can't be trusted himself.
You went and you were in business with the Chinese that gave Hunter Biden $5 million. We can't trust you.
On the topic of Ukraine, DeSantis stated that he wants the war in Ukraine to end as soon as possible, but that it is Europe's responsibility to do that, not necessarily the United States.
But they've sent money to pay bureaucrats' pensions and salaries and funding small businesses halfway around the world. Meanwhile, our own country is being invaded.
That if we're going to be sending aid to anywhere, it needs to be to our southern border. Things started to get heated again as Tim Scott said that 90% of aid we're sending to Ukraine is actually a loan going to NATO, and that we need to degrade the Russian military in order to prevent an invasion of a NATO country.
Our national vital interest is in degrading the Russian military.
Everyone on stage tried to get a word in, and Ramaswamy managed to call Ukraine a bad country to start with, and that Russia is going to run into China's arms, forming an alliance with them.
But Putin's an evil dictator does not mean that Ukraine is good. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties.
A win
that has
for Russia is a
that
win
is not
for
true.
China.
We're driving
a win
Russia.
For Russia
Excuse
is
me.
a win for China.
Excuse me, Nikki, you'll have
but
your chance.
I forgot you like China. That's why you're
you'll have your chance in just a moment. China is the real enemy, and we're driving Russia further into China's arms.
The topic didn't go much further after this, though Chris Christie did say that Putin can't be talked to, and that after Ukraine, he'll be coming for Poland.
And let me tell you, if you think that's where it's going to stop, if we give him any of Ukraine, next will be Poland.
Doug Burgum said that we are currently in a tech and agricultural war with China and Russia, and that our climate policies are hurting us more than climate change is.
It's not about climate change that we need worried about. It's about the Biden climate policies that are actually the existential threat to America's future.
Ramaswamy reiterated his belief that we need to focus on drilling for oil and fracking in order to boost the economy and get people working, something Scott also stated, while Pence said that we need to become energy independent again, like when he was vice president. Haley called for backing our energy producers and helping them where they need it, and called out Ron DeSantis for practicing Green Deal policies in Florida.
Ron DeSantis is against fracking. He's against drilling. He's been against, you did it. He always talks about what happens on day one. You better watch out, because what happens on day two is when you're in trouble.
Which he didn't like very much and led to a bit of civil conversation between the two.
Enacted a constitutional amendment.
You banned it before they
doesn't
voted.
allow. No, it's not true.
You banned it before
The chaos continued as DeSantis mentioned that colleges should be on the hook for student debt if their graduates are unable to make a good living.
Do we expand the gender studies department, knowing some of those graduates may not have great learning opportunities? No, they're going to focus on the things that really matter.
Tim Scott said that we need to pass a balanced budget amendment.
I would love to have an opportunity to have this country pass a balanced budget amendment.
To which Haley responded that Scott is part of the spending problem.
He's been there 12 years and he hasn't done any of that. He hasn't. They've only given 4 budgets on time in 40 years. He was part of that. He increased the national debt. He voted for the spending.
Another argument erupted, and DeSantis' voice prevailed when he said that he is the only one on stage that could handle the heat of this job.
Nikki
I'm
Haley.
the only one up here who's gotten in the big fights and has delivered big victories for the people of Florida, and that's what it's all about.
Ramaswamy said that the government budget needs to be treated more like a business budget, and Burgum finally managed to get a word in, saying that he's successfully been doing all of this as governor of North Dakota.
To say that nobody's fighting the big fights, just look at the record of what we're doing right now. Energy, economy, national security, I've been talking about it since day one. We've got the answer in North Dakota.
Talking about abortion, DeSantis said that allowing abortion up to birth is wrong, and Christie added that being pro-life means the whole of a child's life, not just before they're born.
If you're pro-life, you have to be pro-life for the entire life, not just the 9 months in the womb.
Saying that sources for addiction recovery need to be more available. And Pence finished the topic by saying that a president must be a champion and stand for all Americans, including those yet to be born. Tim Scott shared his thoughts on standing with minorities, but then pivoted to attack Nikki Haley about increasing taxes.
What we need are leaders who lead by example. And I will simply say, I would love to finish my conversation with Nikki as it relates to the job that needs to get done.
To which she responded,
Bring it,
Put
Tim.
$50,000 on curtains.
and the two of them started going at it, talking about taxes and eventually even curtains. And the moderators had to cut to commercial break to end the arguing.
Obama bought those curtains.
Did you send them back?
It's in the press.
Did you send them back?
It's the State Department.
Did you send them back?
Did you send them back? You're the one that works in Congress.
You wanted
Ladies and gentlemen, we do not intend to go ahead like this. In fact, we're about to take a commercial break.
After coming back, the moderators asked everyone on stage to vote someone else off the island by writing a name on a whiteboard.
I'll decline to do that with all due respect. I mean, we're here, like, we're happy to debate, but I think that that's disrespectful to my fellow competitors.
Nobody wants to participate.
Let's do some questions. Let's talk about the future of the country.
Led by Ron DeSantis, all of the candidates on stage declined to participate. Instead, DeSantis affirmed that he intends to beat Donald Trump, even though he is polling so much lower and plans to do it state by state. Christie said that if he were to vote anyone off the island, it would be Donald Trump.
I vote Donald Trump off the island right now. And the reason I vote him off the island, every person on this stage has shown the respect for Republican voters. I have respect for every man and woman on this stage because they've done it. Vivek, put your hand down for a second, would you? This guy has not only divided our party, he's divided families all over this country.
Ramaswamy closed out the debate by saying that Donald Trump was an excellent president and that his Make America Great Again mantra is bigger than a single person, and that he intends to continue what Trump started.
When we rallied behind the cry to make America great again, we did not just hunger for a single man. We hungered for the unapologetic pursuit of excellence, but we will unite this country to take the America First agenda to the next level, and that will take a different generation to do it.
That does it. I repeat, that does it for the second Republican primary debate.
And just like that, the second Republican primary debate was over. Much more heated than the last one, with some similar topics as well as some new ones. Let's go ahead and recap what each candidate had to say tonight. Ron DeSantis pointed to his time as governor of Florida as a major qualification to be president, having been in the national eye many times and being able to withstand much of the heat that comes from that. He believes that everyone in DC, Republicans and Democrats, are to blame for the current state of our economy, and has an unfavorable opinion of companies like Apple and Google, which he calls monopolies. He believes that we rely on China too much and need to change our attitude towards it. He wants to see an end to the war in Ukraine, but believes that it is the primary responsibility of Europe to end it, not us, and that the crisis at the southern border is more important. He would use the military to go after the cartel in Mexico, treating them like a terrorist organization, and would support and back the police in our country. He blames expensive healthcare costs on big pharma and insurance companies and believes in removing critical race theory and other progressive curriculums from schools. He said that colleges should be on the hook for student debt forgiveness and reiterates his belief that late-term abortions are wrong. Vivek Ramaswamy believes victimization is a problem in this country and that the country is divided between Republicans and most Democrats versus a slim minority of extreme Democrats. He wants to run the government budget like a business and would tap into oil, coal, and nuclear energy here in the US to create more jobs, stimulate the economy, and rely less on China. He uses TikTok, even though it is connected to the Chinese government, in order to reach a younger audience, though he plans to do something about it as president. He would militarize the southern border in order to seal it and wants to end birthright laws of the children of illegal immigrants. He wants to leave Ukraine altogether, saying that Ukraine isn't a good country. He believes that transgenderism is a mental disorder and that it should be illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to undergo gender reassignment surgeries. He also believes that Donald Trump was an excellent president and that he is the one to continue what Trump started. Nikki Haley says that the root of our economic troubles is inflation caused by overspending, and that she would change how the government sets its budget to avoid further government shutdowns. She says that healthcare is too expensive because the industry lacks transparency with its patients, and she would defund sanctuary cities and increase funding to the Border Patrol. She wants to take better care of law enforcement and improve prosecution of criminals. She believes we need to focus on students' reading abilities and that schools should be determined at a state level instead of a federal one. She believes we rely on China too much and wants to offer more support to our own energy producers. Tim Scott believes that the government needs to stop overpromising and underdelivering when it comes to unions. He also believes that parents need to keep more of their taxes in order to take care of their families, and compares the Lyndon B. Johnson desegregation policies to slavery and discrimination. He would like to see the US degrade the Russian military in order to avoid a future invasion of a NATO country, and wants to see a balanced budget amendment in order to avoid government shutdowns. Chris Christie voiced his disapproval of Donald Trump many times, calling him out for not being present at the debates and for being too divisive. He believes that everyone in DC is failing at their jobs and also believes that we can no longer provide amnesty to illegal immigrants. He calls out his experience running a district attorney's office and would start there to address crime in this country. He also believes in giving parents a greater choice in schooling for their children. He believes that AI has much to offer and that we can't be afraid of or regulate innovation, and believes that Putin can't be talked to and must be defeated or he'll continue invading neighboring countries. Mike Pence blames Bidenomics-caused inflation for economic struggles, not the wage gap. He supports a nationwide right to work and feels that he has the most experience dealing with the southern border as vice president. He would pass an expedited death penalty for those who commit mass shootings and would remove federal health care and return it to the states. He would enact a nationwide ban of underage gender change and see that parents are better informed about the state of their children. He also wants to see the US become energy independent like we were when he was vice president. Doug Burgum called out Biden's subsidizing of electric Chinese-made vehicles as a cause for manufacturing worker hardships, and said that the solution to reducing gun violence is to focus on behavioral health, not removing guns. He says that the healthcare industry is expensive and inefficient because the government has subsidized specific products and technology that hinders more than it helps, and the federal government has no place in schools. He believes that we are in an agricultural and technological war with China and Russia, and that climate policies are hurting more than climate change is. On our video covering the first Republican debate, a few of you pointed out that we covered some candidates more than others. And the reason for that is not because we're biased towards one person or another, but because they were the ones who made their voices heard and spoke the most. The number one goal in a debate is to talk as much as possible, which is why you see so much interrupting and speaking out of turn. Though, this method can backfire if it makes you seem pushy or annoying. 24 hours after the debate, the polls moved a bit like this. Trump increased to 55.1%, which is almost the highest his poll numbers have looked all year. DeSantis stayed relatively still at 3.5%. Ramaswamy and Haley grew to 6.6% and 6.5% respectively. Pence remains in fifth, lowering a bit to 4%. Christie and Scott are now tied at 2.7%, and Doug Burgum reached 1%. Now, there is still plenty of time before March of 2024 when the elections will begin, and so many things can happen. If there are any candidates or subject you'd like us to dive deeper into, let us know in the comments and we'll be sure to shout you out in that episode. Make sure you're subscribed and that the bell icon is rung so you don't miss our next video. Thank you so much for watching. This has been The Political Stalker, and we'll see you next time.